Well, I think we're all hoping that the end of the war is actually here, the end of the war between Gaza and Israel, really just the slaughter, the genocide of the Palestinian people. Or is this just another attempt to buy some time to finish the job? That is the big question. Is the war really over? One reason to think it might not be is that this is another phased deal. I would love to have seen this be just a one deal. That's it. It's over. But instead, this is another one of those phased deals. They've agreed to phase one and they're celebrating phase one. But what happens when we get to phase two and the Israelis say, actually, we're going to buy ourselves some more time. Actually, we don't think that you're really living up to the agreement, when last time we had a phased deal, Hamas did live up to their side of the deal completely. And Israel claimed they didn't because they just didn't like the fanfare of how they released the hostages, or they had little nitpicky things that they didn't like. And they decided to renege on the deal. Is that going to happen again this time? That is the big question that we're all asking. But let's get to what this deal is. So Donald Trump, of course, proudly proclaiming that this is the end of the deal, saying here that he's proud to announce the end of the first phase, or that both have signed off, that Hamas and Israel have both signed off on the first phase of the peace plan. This means that all of the hostages will be released very soon, and Israel will withdraw their troops to an agreed-upon line as the first steps towards a strong, durable, and everlasting peace. This is what Hamas had to say about the agreement.
Happy to announce that we have reached a deal for ceasefire to put an end to the aggression, and also to proceed to a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of the army, and to allow the aid to enter to Gaza and to open the Rafah crossing from both sides.
You know, I didn't think it could happen to me, but just recently someone stole my information and actually bought a car under my name in Texas. While I was standing in the Idaho DMV getting my new driver's license, a thief was driving off the dealer lot pretending to be me. And I only caught it because I was getting bombarded with alerts. Now imagine if I hadn't seen them in time. And this is exactly why today's sponsor, Aura, matters. If you've ever wondered how scammers get your personal info, your phone number, your address, even where you supposedly work, it's because of data brokers. These shady companies collect your data and sell it to anyone, from marketers to scammers, and they make billions doing it. They don't ask your permission. And while they're legally required to remove your info if you ask, they make the process nearly impossible on purpose. Believe me, I'm going through it right now. But if I had Aura set up before, this thief would have had a much harder time. Aura automatically scans and scrubs your information from those data broker sites, and then it keeps it off. It also gives you real-time fraud alerts, so instead of finding out a day later that someone used your name, you get notified right away. That's the kind of tool I wish I had in place when all of this happened. But Aura is more than just removing your data from shady brokers. It's an all-in-one digital security app. It alerts you if your personal info is found on the dark web. It monitors your credit and bank accounts in real time. It gives you a secure VPN, password manager, antivirus, and more. And if something does happen, Aura covers you with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance and 24/7 US-based fraud support. The fact that companies profit off of our stolen data while we're left vulnerable is outrageous. I learned that the hard way. But I'm not leaving myself unprotected anymore, and you shouldn't either. Protect yourself and your family with Aura. Try it free for 14 days at aura.com/Kim Iverson. And in just 2 weeks, Aura will show you where your personal data is being exposed and start scrubbing it off the internet automatically. Again, that's aura.com/Kim Iverson. And also, Hamas leadership have said that the United States have given them some guarantees this time. So I'm sure that the Hamas negotiators sat there at the table and said, well, wait a minute. Last time we did a phase deal, we all know what happened. We did what we were supposed to do. We agreed to everything. We went through with phase one. As soon as we got to the part where we were supposed to go into phase two, Israel suddenly had a change of heart and started bombing us to death and demanding that they basically get an entirely new deal than what was agreed upon. So what's going to be different this time? Well, Hamas says that this time they've received some guarantees. We don't know what those guarantees are, but they're saying they've received guarantees from the United States. This is what Netanyahu has to say. With the approval of the first phase of the plan, all our hostages will be brought home. This is a diplomatic success and a national and moral victory for the state of Israel. From the beginning, I made it clear we will not rest until all of our hostages return and all of our goals are achieved. That's the problem. And then he says, through steadfast resolve, powerful military action, and the great efforts of our great friend and ally, President Trump, we have reached this critical turning point. I thank President Trump for his leadership, his partnership, and his unwavering commitment to the safety of Israel and the freedom of our hostages. God bless Israel. God bless America. God bless our great alliance. Of course, everybody, a lot of people are celebrating. The Israelis are celebrating, rightfully so. I mean, they've been waiting for a long time trying to pressure Netanyahu to get to a deal that gets the hostages back. The deals have been how they've been able to get the hostages back, not through military action. And the Israelis are now celebrating that this phase of the deal should result in every last one coming home. And at this point, I think it's time. I don't actually know why Hamas didn't release the hostages earlier, because Israel would have still continued to pummel them and bomb them. And then Israel wouldn't have had the excuse of, well, we're only doing this because you have our hostages and we want our hostages back. Many of us know that is not why Israel was doing it. Israel was doing it because they were trying to get the Palestinians off the land. They don't want a two-state solution. They believe that land is biblically theirs. And so they had no real intention of ending. And I wish that Hamas would have had maybe the foresight to realize that and just released all the hostages and then let Israel show itself to be the monster that it has been to the Palestinians for decades and decades. The Palestinians are also celebrating this, of course. They're all hoping that this really will be the end of death and destruction in the Strip, and that there will be actual rebuilding that happens. We're now seeing some aid trucks being moved in. They're preparing and getting. They're on the way. You know, they're starting to head in that direction, or they're preparing for any minute the ceasefire deal to be signed off by the cabinet, and those trucks can roll in. The Red Cross is also on its way in the Strip, getting ready to collect the hostages. And I'm sure that there's others on the other side, on the Israeli side, collecting all of the Palestinian hostages that are going to be released. Trump does thank the Arab nations. He says they had a lot to do with this agreement.
So I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the leaders of Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey for helping us reach this incredible day and for being there. They were there with us all the way. And of course, as you know, Saudi Arabia and Jordan and so many. I will tell you, President Erdogan was personally involved in dealing with Hamas and some of the others. He's been great. They've all been really amazing. Indonesia's been amazing.
Trump also gave the good news to the families of the Israeli hostages.
They want to say something. Is that right? All right, hold on. President Trump, you have the best crowd in the world. What do you guys have to say to President Trump?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
You did it!
You did it! Thank you!
This is amazing. Mr. President, we believe in you. We know you've done so much for us over the past, since you became a president, and even before that. And we trust you fulfill the mission until every hostage, every 48 of the hostages are home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Have fun. So long. Goodbye.
It's just got to be a major relief, I think, for these families to get their family members home. Let's go over this first phase of the agreement so that we understand what it is exactly. So the ceasefire is going to begin likely within 24 hours of cabinet approval. So we're just waiting on the Israeli cabinet. In the meantime, Gaza is still under attack. They are still being hit by the Israelis. They've definitely scaled back, but they are still very much fighting, and they're not stopping right now, not until the cabinet approves the deal and the ceasefire is official. So within 24 hours of cabinet approval, that's when the ceasefire will begin. Then Israeli troops are going to have to pull back to leave Israel in control of 53% of Gaza. This is the first of the three planned kind of phased reduction. Let me show you actually what the what the phases look like. So the first phase right now, they just have to get out of everything within that blue line area. So it's not much. This does leave them in control of still the majority of Gaza, which is 53%. Then apparently phase 2, if they can negotiate it out, they still haven't negotiated phase 2. They have to negotiate it. Anything could happen. That's why I'm not really holding my breath on this. But when they get to phase 2, that is when the Israelis are supposed to move back to propose to that. Actually, right now, they might actually be, I think they might have to go to that yellow line. And then they go to the red line. And then they go to that last perimeter all around. Right now, let me see what this blue line right now is the current control of the IDF. So they're all the way up into that blue area. They're all the way up. So they have to withdraw to the yellow line is what they need to do. And then the next phase, they go to the red line. And then the next phase, they go to this like security perimeter that they're saying that they're going to take. I don't know why they need that security perimeter. They could build the security perimeter outside of the strip, just like they did before. I mean, I'm not really sure why they feel like they have to take that area as a security perimeter when what's the difference between that area and the area just outside of, they're just trying to shrink Gaza's land. I think that's kind of the idea there. But so they have to pull back and leave Israel, but they'll still be able to leave Israel in control of 53% of Gaza. Then Hamas must release all of the 20 living hostages within 72 hours, which is why Trump is saying by Monday or Tuesday, all of the hostages should be home. Depends on the Israeli cabinet. So they've got 72 hours to give all the 20 living hostages back, to be followed by the return of the 28 deceased hostages' remains. And Trump has acknowledged that it's going to be difficult to locate all 28 of the bodies of the deceased. And he says that everyone's going to do the best that they can. So when reporters were asking about this today, rather than Trump taking the tone of, well, if they can't really, look, deal's off if they don't return those 28 deceased bodies, we want the bodies back. He instead said, look, some of them are going to be very difficult to locate, but everybody's going to do the best that they can. And so I think that was the right answer. That's the appropriate answer. That's really the only answer. The 20 living hostages will be returned. Israel, in exchange, will release 250 Palestinian prisoners that are serving life sentences and 1,700 detainees. So I don't know why do they call them detainees and not hostages? This is like it's a war of words. It's a battle of words. And Israel has been holding hostage quite a few Palestinians, many, many more Palestinians than the Palestinians have been holding, and they're going to be returned as well. Notably, however, one of the most prominent leaders of the Palestinian movement is Marwan Barghouti, and he's not going to be released with this hostage exchange. He's not included in the swap. Also, for each Israeli hostage remains, Israel will return 15 Gazan bodies. So think about that. They've got more bodies on their side than Hamas has on theirs. So again, just showing the disparity of this war. For every one body Hamas will give back to the Israelis will deliver 15 Gazan bodies that died not in Gaza, not buried under the rubble, but in Israel. The people they tortured to death in those prisons. Hundreds of trucks are going to be allowed into Gaza. That's going to be 400 minimum a day, ramping up to 600 minimum a day, where famine has been officially declared by the UN. And then once they do all of this, then they're going to start negotiating the second phase of the deal. And this is where things get really dicey. And this is what happened last time. They agreed to a certain number of hostages to be released. As soon as all those hostages were released, Israel suddenly blew up the deal and said, actually, never mind, we want to renegotiate the whole thing. And Hamas says, no, we already had agreed on these 3 phases, and we just did phase 1, and now you're trying to say you don't want phase 2 and phase 3 that we already agreed upon. That's what I'm worried is going to happen again. But I think that if that does happen again, this will only make the Palestinians look better. Well, it'll definitely make the Israelis look worse. They'll have all their hostages. They have no more excuses. They've been using the just give us our hostages back and we'll stop pummeling you excuse. They've been using that this whole time. When they have all their hostages back, what is going to be their excuse? They're going to maybe try to use we don't have all of our bodies back. Well, a lot of those 28 bodies are probably difficult to find because you probably buried them under the rubble. You might have been the ones that actually killed them. I mean, as it stands right now, when it comes to the operation, 251 hostages were initially taken by Hamas. Of the 251, about 140 have been released, not including this next batch. 140 up to today have been released through negotiation. Do you know how many Israel has been able to rescue using military operations? 8 out of the 251. Oh, but they've, at least that we know of and that they've admitted to, killed 7. So they rescued 8. They killed 7 of their own in friendly fire accidents. You know, the hostages that were waving their white shirts and running and speaking Hebrew, and they still got shot and killed by the IDF, or those that were blown up by missiles. You know, that the hostages saying they were more afraid of Israel than anybody. Yeah, because 7 of them got killed. 8 of them were rescued. 140 of them have been released through negotiation. And now we're going to see finally the last ones released through negotiation. That is what's worked, but Israel hasn't cared to they instead want to gaslight everybody and brainwash everybody into believing that, you know, the only way is to just commit genocide and bomb the Palestinians to death. The next phase is Israeli withdrawals will be to the 40% and then to 15% of Gaza control. Right at this point, the Israelis have said they want to maintain 15% of control of Gaza. Hamas is not agreeing to that, or whoever ends up in charge of Palestine doesn't seem to be agreeing to that. So that's going to be a sticking point. Another sticking point is going to be the disarmament of Hamas. That is another thing that they have not been able to come to an agreement on. Hamas doesn't want to, I'm sure, give their weapons up to Israel. Not only that, but you have to have some weapons because you have to have police forces. You can't just, you know, I mean, every city in America, every small town in America, everywhere in the world, you have to have police because there are just always bad people in every population. So they don't want to disarm completely. And so there's a lot of questions around that. And who do they give their weapons to? The decommissioning, like what's going to happen with that? That's going to be a bit more of a discussion. And that's why phase 2 is going to take longer and they're negotiating it out. But again, that also leaves a lot of room for this to just get blown up and for us to be back where we are, where we've been, which is Israel just pummeling the place, saying we're not stopping till we finish the job. In fact, Ben-Gvir, he's one of the most hardline Israeli insane people. And he's already threatening this government, saying, how dare you do this? He says, our hearts are filled with joy, happiness, and excitement over the fact that all of our hostages are expected to return to their homes, to life with their families, and to rehabilitation, and the fallen to burial. However, alongside this joy, it is absolutely forbidden to ignore the question of the price. The release of thousands of terrorists, including 250 murderers who are expected to be freed from prisons. This is an unbearably heavy price. There are terrorists whom past experience proves will return to engaging in terrorism and to their craft of acting to murder Jews. Well, what about you guys who have been mowing the lawn and murdering Palestinians by massive numbers year after year after year, even years they're not at war? So many Palestinians get killed by the IDF. So who's the terrorist? I mean, both sides are terrorists if you're going to look at, if you're really going to look at terrorists. But many would say the Israelis are actually more so the terrorists. Therefore, in the light of this, I and the ministers of Jewish power, that's apparently the name of his, Jewish power. I mean, could you get more unlikable? I mean, this is the name of his political group. I and the ministers of Jewish power will not be able to raise our hands in favor of a deal that releases those murderous terrorists, and we will oppose it in the government. Alongside the good news of the release of all of our hostages, we do not forget the central goal of the war that was defined at its outset to ensure that this disaster cannot reoccur through the dismantling of Hamas rule. In conversations that took place between me and the Prime Minister in recent days, I clarified that under no circumstance will I be part of a government that allows the continued existence of Hamas rule in Gaza. This is a glaring red line. The Prime Minister committed to me that this is how it will be. I told the Prime Minister, and I'm telling you too, citizens of Israel, I will not lend a hand to any case of deception if Hamas rule is not dismantled, or if they just tell us that it has been dismantled, while in practice it continues to exist under another guise. Jewish power will dismantle the government. So he's threatening Netanyahu, threatening the government, saying, if we don't get what we want, we're actually going to go against you, Netanyahu. So Hamas also issued a statement. They say the Islamic resistance movement issued the following statement. Following serious and responsible negotiation conducted by the movement and other Palestinian resistance factions in response to President Trump's proposal, aimed at bringing an end to the war of extermination against our Palestinian people and securing the withdrawal of the Israeli occupation from Gaza, the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, announces that an agreement has been reached. This agreement provides for one, the cessation of the war on Gaza. Two, the withdrawal of the Israeli occupation from the entire territory. This is where I think they're going to have that sticking point because, right now they're claiming that it's those 3 lines and that Israel will still, in the end, remain in control of 15%. Sounds like Hamas doesn't agree to that. And why would they? 3, the entry and delivery of humanitarian aid. And 4, the exchange of prisoners. We express our deep appreciation to our mediating brothers in Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, and we value the efforts of U.S. President Donald Trump in seeking to end the war permanently and ensure the complete withdrawal of the occupation forces from Gaza. We call upon President Trump, the guarantor states, and all Arab, Islamic, and international parties to ensure the Israeli government fully implements its commitments under the agreement and is not permitted to evade or delay its obligations like it's done every other time. We extend our salute to our steadfast people in Gaza, Jerusalem, the West Bank, and across the homeland and diaspora who have shown unmatched courage and resilience in confronting the Israeli occupation's attempts at domination and displacement. Their sacrifices and steadfastness have thwarted the occupation's plans and upheld the national rights of our people. We affirm that these sacrifices will not be in vain. We remain firm in our principles and will never abandon our people's legitimate rights until they achieve freedom, independence, and self-determination. So that is Hamas's take on this. And, this is going to be really great if it is true that this is going to truly be the end of the war. I don't really know what Trump said to Netanyahu to get him to agree to this. Clearly, negotiations have proven to be the most fruitful in getting their hostages back. So it would have just stood to reason that Netanyahu, who has kind of a brain, would have thought, okay, well, we have to continue to negotiate this out because that's how we're getting our hostages back. But he didn't want to do that. And we all know why he didn't want to do that. That became really clear to the world, what the real motivation was. So the question then is, why now? Like, what is causing him to agree to this? Did Trump promise him something else he really wants? What else he really wants? That would be war with Iran, right? However, reports have come out today that Vladimir Putin was basically Netanyahu told Vladimir Putin to, hey, go tell the Iranians we don't want to war with them. We don't want to go any further with any of this. We just want to work things out and we want to move on. Now, how much of that you believe, that's up to you to decide because certainly Netanyahu's lied quite a bit and shown himself in his true character. But nonetheless, that is the thinking. So what else was said? What else was done? What was promised? What caused Netanyahu to finally do this? And I think that's the big question that we should all be asking, because I think we all know he didn't just do this because he wanted to do. He wasn't just like, okay, now's finally the time. Something else caused him to do this. The big question is what? And the problem is we don't know. But we are very hopeful that this will truly be the end of the onslaught of the Palestinian people. However, history shows us this is not. That as long as Zionism exists as a radical ideology that insists that the Bible promises one group of people who label themselves a certain term. They might not actually, many of the Ashkenazis are not even real bloodline Jews. They don't come from ancient Israel. They were converts hundreds of years later. You could call them trans Jews, people that claim to be Jews, but they're not really. They don't even practice the religion. So how they even took on the label, beats me. It's a question. But these trans Jews have shown up and they're saying the Bible says that we're allowed all this land. And the world goes along with this. And until that ideology is eradicated, that Zionist ideology of God promised us this land, I don't see this conflict ending. That's what has to be defeated. You can't just say, well, we made a deal with the Nazis. And so, the Nazis promised that they're going to keep their Aryan nation within their borders. They've promised that they're going to, they're going to create their Aryan nation, and Germany will just be split in half. And on the east side of the wall, we'll have no Aryan nation, and on the west side of the wall, we'll have the Aryan nation, or whatever it is, right? That's not the deal. The deal is we have to dismantle the Nazi mentality. You cannot have an Aryan nation. You cannot create this and end up exterminating groups of people or kicking them out or expelling them because they don't fit your mold. And until the Zionists, and the problem with Zionism is that they have a biblical prophecy where they believe that they're allowed that they're right not just allowed, it is their birthright. It is their birthright to have all the land from the Egyptian peninsula, really, to take all the way to the Nile River, and to take all of Lebanon, a huge chunk of Syria, a swath of Saudi Arabia. I mean, they believe that a massive amount of that Middle Eastern land is biblically promised to them. And until that ideology is very much eradicated, you're never going to fully eradicate it. We don't have, we haven't eradicated all the Nazis in the world, but we've certainly very much reduced it. And one way to reduce that is American synagogues need to no longer preach Zionism. It is not part of Judaism. They have embedded it in since the wealthy Zionists started donating a lot of money. Same thing with evangelical churches. That is not a part of Judaism. And until the Jewish people demand that that teaching is no longer taught in their synagogues, in every single synagogue where all of their children are indoctrinated, we're not really going to see an end of this conflict. This is just the end of this particular phase of this 75, really over 100-year conflict. That's all this is. And we shouldn't fool ourselves. And this whole notion that Trump deserves a peace prize is ridiculous. He's still not solved the overarching issue here between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And that's what needs to be done. You can't just solve a battle in a war. The war is not over, I should say. This is just maybe, hopefully, the end of this one aspect, this one battle in this war. But let's not be naive. This isn't the end of the war. This isn't the end of Zionism. And I think the world knows this. And the world is not going to stop until they defeat the ideology of Zionism. That's what we're seeing on the streets. We're seeing a lot of the pro-Palestinian protesters and advocates. They're not thrilled about this ceasefire. They're thrilled, but they're at the same time, they're not walking into this like, yay, it's over. Oh, everything's better again. Because it's not. This is just one phase. One phase. But we'll keep our eyes on this. Let's hope that this phase, everybody needs a break. Let's hope that this does result in something that could result in an end fully to the greater, bigger war that's been going on between them. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.